And we are live on Jazz TV Weekly, talking all things conveyancing and contracts today. Super excited. I've got my team member, Nick, and I've got Rebecca from Conveyancing Lab here in Wyndham. We are going to talk about contracts and a lot of questions that we get asked, and obviously talk about contracts and conveyancing in general. So welcome, Rebecca. Thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much. And it'll be an amazing session and a lot of information, I believe. So, Rebecca, let's dive straight into it. Conveyancing. What is conveyancing and what is the role of a conveyancer?
Sure. So a conveyancer can represent either a purchaser or a vendor when purchasing a property. And we prepare contracts of sale for the vendor when they're selling their property. And not only does it stop there at the point of the contract,
Right.
but we prepare all the legal documents and we organise for the property to be transferred into the buyer's name.
The buyer's name,
yeah. So we work in the background and work with the buyer and vendor leading up to settlement once you've sold the property.
Perfect. Now, some purchasers, obviously first home buyers, sometimes they don't know who's conveyancer.
Yep.
And the question comes in, do we really need a conveyancer? Is it necessary to have a conveyancer? What's the answer for them?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So, look, and I always say to buyers that it's important to get advice on a contract before actually putting a signature down.
On the offer.
There can be a lot of information contained in the contract that, a purchaser may not have knowledge of or may not expect to have known.
Makes sense.
So, it's really important to get a contract and, we draft special conditions that are relevant to a vendor and purchaser to suit their needs.
Gotcha.
And what their requirements are.
So it's not a generic contract anyone can prepare. It's mainly, it's more to suit the person's situation and add the conditions to protect either the purchaser or the vendor.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And the other question it's asked to us, like say for an example, we list a property, a vendor says, look, I can get any conveyancer to draw up a contract.
Yeah.
Is it just bound around the contract? What are the other things a conveyancer, a good, capable conveyancer brings on the table?
Yeah.
What are the things that happen after the contract signed by the purchaser and the vendor? And is it just about the contract, or is any contract a watertight contract?
Absolutely not. So there's a contract and there's a contract. The contract itself in the section 32 are documents that are prepared by a conveyancer.
Right.
But there are certificates that we order from authorities such as the council that discloses whether there's been any building permits issues, whether there's been any building notices issued. Vic Road certificate, is there a planned freeway or road through the property?
Right.
So we order a full set of certificates,
Gotcha.
Planning information as well, your title search, and all that is contained in the contract. We don't take shortcuts and we don't cut costs. Contracts can be prepared on a fairly simple basis, where they're just a conveyancer's just putting in a title search,
makes sense, just
planning
a generic,
certificate, and the very basic information. Now that could therefore deem a contract invalid, and a purchaser could end a contract on that basis if there's no, disclosure in there that could affect a buyer.
And I think there's a lot of areas where the vendors can actually put themselves in a potential risk where I've seen the cases where some purchasers have tried to even not settle on the property where the full disclosure was not there in the contract.
Yeah.
Or in other words, saying the contracts were not prepared properly and all the certificates and searches were not relevant, even though those things would not impact the buyer adversely in financial way. However, it does give them a reason to either renegotiate or potentially try to end the contract. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And it could be, it's something simple. Let's say it's not disclosed in the contract that you can't subdivide the property or you can't build another property on the another dwelling on the block, or
Right.
you can't do this, you can't do that. If that's not disclosed, and that's the purchase intention in the future,
Right.
then they can certainly avoid a contract. And
Wow.
it's certainly not worth cutting costs and shortcuts for the sake of a couple of $100.
Wow.
To allow a purchaser out of a contract is certainly not an ideal
Not an ideal
situation for everybody, for
exactly.
buyer, for vendor, for real estate agent, for mortgage broker.
Exactly. So many people
involved.
get involved into the process of selling, and
Yeah.
and a lot of hard work goes into the sale. So it's ideal to sort of start and have a strong foundation of the sale, which is having a good contract and a contract which is watertight. And obviously the advice which people can actually get from a capable conveyancer makes a massive difference versus not getting advice. Or even what I've seen is after the property is sold, the vendors have got so many questions and they're not getting the advice which is ideal, or even some scenarios where the advice was not correct. Which could put the vendors in a state of mind. They feel that they're the losing end. However, on the flip side, they actually are on the right side. And if the conveyancer is giving the right advice, they actually have better control on the sale process.
Yeah.
And I think today we've opened up the Q&A as well. And what we'll today do is Nick is receiving a lot of questions from our audience on our Facebook. So, Nick, what do we have today? Where's how many questions do we have so far, and what are we on about today with the questions?
So we've got a fair few, a lot of them based in Point Cook, obviously, with our clientele and client base.
Yeah.
So our first one comes from Jamie in Alamanda. So the question is, how do I avoid issues at settlement as a vendor, and what are some of these issues?
Good question.
Yep. So there can certainly be issues. One, of course, could be surrounding a final inspection where a purchaser goes and does their final inspection and, expected the property to be in absolute pristine condition, or this is missing, that's missing. I thought I was getting this and that. So, communication is always
a key, yeah.
Vendors aren't under any obligation to make any repairs, etc. And the purchaser is buying the property in the condition that it was as at the day of sale, fair wear and tear accepted.
Yes.
But you certainly want to make sure that all parties are happy.
That's correct.
At settlement, and you certainly want to avoid any dispute.
That's correct. And I suppose it also comes down where communication from the agent side is critical as well, where the agent has communicated or have a system in place, a document of that type, which helps the purchasers and vendors as well.
Yeah.
And I guess it's a very good answer for the purchasers to get more clarity, and obviously the vendors to get more control on. Yeah. And obviously, as a goodwill gesture, it's good to provide a property in a reasonable, clean condition, or obviously in a good condition. It's someone's future asset as well.
Yeah.
And next, jumping on to the next question.
Yep. So we've got Steve from Saltwater. He's asked, what is the go with material facts and the disclosure around that?
Yeah. So look, we ask our vendors certain questions before we go ahead and prepare a contract.
Right.
And some of those questions we ask are known as material facts. And that is something like, has somebody died in their house?
Right.
Has there been a significant event that has occurred?
Right.
At the property? Was it formerly a drug house where?
Right.
Okay.
Some information
prior to this vendor owning. So there's things that do need to disclose and be disclosed, and they don't necessarily form part of the contract. So they are called material facts, and it's up to the vendor or the agent to disclose those material facts to a buyer.
Makes sense. And I think it's becoming, the laws are changing around property sales and even rental side of it. And it's becoming a lot of factual information-based scenarios where the purchasers and the tenants or renters, now known as, are entitled for a lot of information. So I think having a real estate agent plus a conveyancer alongside with a vendor could mean that there will be a seamless selling journey.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And it's important to have that communication with the vendor and understand absolutely everything
Yes.
about the property as much as we can.
Exactly. And I think the big question here is that not every information could be relayed on a short live today.
Yeah.
And if someone wants to reach out to yourself,
Yep.
obviously to have a holistic approach and an advice based on their situation,
Yep.
where can they contact you?
Call me.
Yes.
So yeah, they can contact us. Websites conveyancinglab.com.au or email at rebecca@conveyancinglab.com.au. Google us. We're on socials, Facebook, Insta.
Everywhere.
But we're here and available, to our to vendors and purchasers out there, first home buyers, upsizers,
Exactly.
downsizers,
Off the plan,
you name it.
block of lands, apartments, anything, reach out to Rebecca.
Yep.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Rebecca,
you
for
for
your
having
time,
me.
and really appreciate your
Thank
time.
you.
I know you have a very busy schedule, so thank you so much for making a time out for us.
You're welcome. It's been
Perfect.
awesome. Thank you.
Perfect,
Thank
guys.
you for listening.
Thank you so much, guys. You have a lovely week ahead, and we'll come back with another Jazz TV Weekly with another topic, and we'll have Rebecca back on one of our next lives. Till then,